Can 20 clocks chime at the same time in New Delhi this Sunday? Will there be a G20 joint declaration in New Delhi? That's the one question that is repeatedly coming up as the capital gears up to host the mega event. Now, on the face of it, the differences between the G20 members hints that a consensus on the joint declaration may be difficult. And if a joint communique is not put out at the end of the summit, it would make India's G20 presidency the first to not do so. The biggest division in the grouping is on the Russia-Ukraine war. Russia and China on one side, and the West, led by the United States, firmly on the other side. India's proposal on the paragraph addressing the Ukraine conflict has reportedly fallen short of finding middle ground, so far being unable to satisfy the demands of both Western nations and the Russo-Chinese faction. India, on its part, is making all efforts to build consensus for final declaration.
New Delhi leaders' declaration is almost ready. The challenge about any multilateral discussion is that you have to bring consensus across every issue. Every country has a veto power, and therefore we have to bring everybody on board.
The effort is to bring the negotiating parties together through compromises on language, because India is the president of this G20. But so far, various delegations at the summit are seemingly very divided still over the draft language of the joint declaration. So what happened in Bali? During the G20 Summit in Bali in 2022, a joint declaration was issued, but after much back and forth on the Ukraine issue in particular. A credit to the deft diplomacy displayed by President Widodo of Indonesia, the Bali Declaration finally read that most members, quote unquote, most members condemned Russia's invasion of Ukraine. It also called for countries to respect the UN Charter and uphold international law. However, it seems now that Russia and China are refusing to accept the language that they accepted and agreed to in 2022, which is causing the frustration. Earlier this year, these very divergences stalled the release of a joint declaration during the G20 Foreign Ministers meeting. At that time, External Affairs Minister Dr. S. Jaishankar had in fact said that these divergences could not be reconciled. Only the chair's summary and an outcome document was issued after the meeting. A joint communique was conspicuous by its absence. Even the G20 finance ministers meeting in India ended without consensus. No joint statement could be issued, once again due to divergence on the Russia-Ukraine war. Now, what is worse is that for the New Delhi declaration, this is after the leaders meeting in New Delhi this Sunday, we do not know yet if Russia and China will compromise despite India's efforts. More so because of the absence of Russia's Putin and China's Xi Jinping. In their conspicuous absence, delegates from both Russia and China may not have the required room to negotiate on the letter and spirit of any draft joint declaration. Let's look at the facts on the table so far. Just one day ago, US National Security Council Coordinator John Kirby, he pointed out that the G20 summit may end without a joint declaration. This is because of the differences with Russia and China. Now, he said it was difficult to get 20 clocks to chime at the same time. Of course, the US later tried to tone down that rhetoric by saying that the US hopes that a spirit of compromise, quote unquote, will be reached on contentious issues, but Kirby's words may well be prophetic. On the other side of the table sits Russia. Russian Foreign Minister Sergei Lavrov, who is representing Moscow at the meeting, has already said that Russia will block any summit declaration that doesn't reflect Moscow's views on Ukraine and other crises. Even European Union officials have indicated their disapproval of the draft text for the joint communique scheduled for release at the New Delhi G20 Summit. The language related to the Ukraine war remains the big bone of contention. For India, which is basking in the glory of G20 presidency, the stakes are high. If a joint statement is secured, India's diplomatic reputation will indeed get a huge, massive boost. It will also go a long way in putting a big halo around New Delhi's big moment on the world stage. But if a joint communique or a joint declaration is not forthcoming at the end of the summit, India's presidency will be the first time around that it has not happened after a G20 meeting.